Sarah Martinez pulled her rental car up to the main gate of Fort Harrison military base. The morning sun cast long shadows across the entrance as she reached into her purse for her identification. At 32 years old, Sarah had the kind of quiet confidence that came from years of dedication to her work, though few people outside her immediate circle knew exactly what that work entailed. The young guard at the gate, Private Jackson, barely looked up from his phone when she stopped at the checkpoint. He was new to the base, having been transferred just 2 weeks earlier, and the early morning shift always made him drowsy. When Sarah rolled down her window and extended her ID card, he waved dismissively without even glancing at it. "Ma'am, this is a restricted military facility. You need to turn around and leave immediately," Private Jackson said, his voice carrying the authority he thought his uniform gave him. He had dealt with lost tourists and confused civilians before, and he assumed this was just another case of someone taking a wrong turn. Sarah remained calm, her voice steady as she tried again. "I understand this is a restricted area. That's exactly why I need you to check my identification. I have an appointment this morning." The guard finally looked at her, taking in her civilian clothes and modest sedan. Nothing about her appearance suggested she belonged on a military base. She wore a simple navy blazer and white blouse, her dark hair pulled back in a professional style. To Private Jackson, she looked like any other civilian who had wandered into the wrong place. "Listen, lady, I don't care what kind of appointment you think you have. Civilians aren't allowed on this base without proper escort and advance clearance. Now please turn your vehicle around before I have to call for backup." Sarah took a deep breath, maintaining her composure despite the frustration building inside her. She had been through situations like this before, though not quite so brazenly dismissive. Her work often required her to visit various military installations, and while she understood security protocols, she also knew that proper procedure required guards to at least examine identification before making decisions. "Private, I'm asking you one more time to please look at my ID card. It will explain everything you need to know about why I'm here," she said, holding the card closer to his window. Private Jackson's face reddened with irritation. He had been taught to be firm with unauthorized personnel, and this woman's persistence only convinced him that she was trying to talk her way onto the base illegally. In his mind, checking her ID would only encourage her behavior. "Ma'am, I'm not checking anything. You need to leave now, or I'll have to treat this as an attempted unauthorized entry. That's a serious matter involving federal charges." The threat hung in the air between them. Sarah felt a mixture of disbelief and disappointment at the guard's refusal to follow basic security procedures. She had encountered overzealous security before, but never such a complete rejection of protocol. Her morning schedule was tight, with important meetings planned that couldn't easily be rescheduled. Behind her, a small line of vehicles began forming as other personnel arrived for their morning duties. The delay was creating exactly the kind of attention she preferred to avoid. Sarah valued discretion in her work, and public confrontations at military gates were far from ideal. She considered her options carefully. She could demand to speak with the guard's supervisor, but that might take considerable time and create even more of a scene. She could call ahead to her contacts on the base, but that would require explaining why she hadn't been able to get through the gate in the first place. "Private Jackson," she read his name tag aloud. "I want you to remember this moment. In about 10 minutes, you're going to wish you had looked at my identification when I first offered it to you." The young guard laughed, mistaking her calm prediction for an empty threat. "Ma'am, the only thing I'll remember is that I did my job by keeping unauthorized personnel off this base. Now move your vehicle before I have to escalate this situation." Sarah nodded slowly, reaching for her cell phone. She scrolled through her contacts until she found the number she needed. The call was brief, lasting less than 30 seconds, but her tone was professional and authoritative as she spoke to someone on the other end. "This is Sarah Martinez. I'm currently at the main gate of Fort Harrison, and I'm having some difficulty gaining access. Could you please send the appropriate personnel to resolve this situation? Thank you." Private Jackson watched her make the call with growing unease. Something about her demeanor suggested this wasn't a bluff, but he had committed to his position and felt he couldn't back down without losing face. His training had emphasized the importance of maintaining security protocols, and admitting he might have made an error felt like a sign of weakness. The minutes ticked by slowly as they waited in an increasingly uncomfortable standoff. Sarah remained patient in her vehicle, occasionally checking her watch but showing no signs of anger or frustration. Her calm confidence began to make Private Jackson question his decision, but pride prevented him from reconsidering his stance. Other base personnel in the line behind Sarah began to grow restless. Some honked their horns lightly, while others got out of their vehicles to see what was causing the delay. The situation was attracting exactly the kind of attention that security personnel were trained to avoid. As the 8th minute passed since Sarah's phone call, Private Jackson noticed movement in the distance. Several official vehicles were approaching the gate from inside the base, moving with the kind of urgency that suggested something significant was happening. His stomach began to tighten with the first real doubts about his handling of the situation. The convoy of vehicles approaching the gate was unlike anything Private Jackson had seen during his short tenure at Fort Harrison. 3 black SUVs moved in formation, followed by 2 military police vehicles with their lights flashing. The lead vehicle bore the distinctive flags and markings that indicated high-ranking officers were inside. Sarah watched the approaching convoy in her rearview mirror, her expression remaining neutral despite knowing what was about to unfold. She had hoped to avoid this level of attention, but the guard's stubborn refusal to follow protocol had made it inevitable. Her work often required her to maintain a low profile, and dramatic scenes at military gates were precisely what she tried to prevent. Private Jackson's confidence began to crumble as the vehicles drew closer. The flags on the lead SUV indicated the presence of general officers, and his limited experience told him that generals didn't typically respond to routine gate incidents. His hands began to shake slightly as he reached for his radio to call his supervisor. "Sergeant Williams, this is Jackson at the main gate. We have some kind of situation developing here with multiple vehicles approaching. I think I might need backup," he stammered into the radio, his voice betraying his growing panic. The response crackled back immediately. "Jackson, what exactly is happening at your position? I'm seeing reports of high-level personnel moving toward the gate." Before Private Jackson could respond, the convoy arrived at the checkpoint. The lead SUV pulled up directly beside Sarah's rental car, and she could see familiar faces through the tinted windows. These were people she had worked with on numerous classified projects, individuals whose names appeared in briefings that most military personnel would never see. The first person to exit the lead vehicle was General Patricia Hayes, the base commander. At 55 years old, General Hayes had built her reputation on efficiency and attention to detail. Her presence at the gate, especially at this early hour, sent immediate signals throughout the base that something significant was occurring. General Hayes walked directly to Sarah's vehicle, her bearing conveying both authority and respect for the woman inside the car. "Dr. Martinez, I apologize for this inconvenience. We received your call and came immediately to resolve the situation." The title doctor caused Private Jackson's eyes to widen. He had assumed Sarah was just another civilian, but the respectful tone used by a general officer suggested something entirely different. His mouth went dry as he began to realize the magnitude of his mistake. Sarah rolled down her window completely and smiled warmly at General Hayes. "Good morning, Patricia. I appreciate you coming personally, though I was hoping we could resolve this more quietly. I'm afraid the guard declined to examine my credentials." "Of course, we understand completely. Please allow me to escort you to the administration building personally," General Hayes replied, her voice carrying the weight of someone accustomed to dealing with sensitive situations. As this conversation took place, the other vehicles in the convoy disgorged their passengers. Private Jackson watched in growing horror as he recognized the rank insignia of the officers emerging. 2 additional generals stepped out, along with several colonels and the base security chief. This was clearly not a routine response to a gate incident. General Robert Chen, the regional intelligence commander, approached Private Jackson's booth with measured steps. His reputation for thorough investigations preceded him, and base personnel knew that his attention to detail often revealed problems that others might miss. "Private Jackson," General Chen said, reading the young soldier's name tag, "I understand you've been having some difficulty processing Dr. Martinez's credentials this morning." The use of "doctor" again made Private Jackson's heart race. Whatever he had stumbled into was clearly far more serious than he had imagined. His training had covered various security scenarios, but none of them had prepared him for a situation involving multiple general officers responding to his actions at the gate. "Sir, I was just following protocol about unauthorized civilians," Private Jackson managed to say, his voice barely above a whisper. General Chen nodded thoughtfully. "I see. And part of that protocol would normally include examining identification to determine if someone is actually unauthorized. Wouldn't you agree?" The question hung in the air like a sword about to fall. Private Jackson realized that his refusal to look at Sarah's ID had violated the very protocols he claimed to be following. Proper security procedure required guards to examine credentials before making determinations about access authorization. Meanwhile, General Hayes was personally escorting Sarah from her vehicle toward the administration building. The sight of a general officer providing personal escort to a civilian was unprecedented in Private Jackson's limited experience, and it drove home the reality that he had made a catastrophic error in judgment. General Thomas Morrison, the third general officer present, approached the gate booth from another angle. His specialty was personnel training and development, and his presence suggested that this incident would likely become a case study in proper security procedures. His stern expression indicated that he was not pleased with what he had observed. "Private Jackson," General Morrison said, his voice carrying decades of military authority, "in your training, were you taught that security protocols require guards to examine identification before denying access to military installations?" "Yes, sir," Private Jackson replied, his voice barely audible as the full weight of his mistake became clear. "And yet, when Dr. Martinez offered to show you her credentials, you refused to look at them. Can you explain the reasoning behind that decision?" The question was fair but devastating. Private Jackson had no reasonable explanation for refusing to follow basic security procedures. His assumption that Sarah was an unauthorized civilian had led him to abandon the very protocols he was supposed to enforce. As the conversation continued, other base personnel began to arrive in response to the unusual activity at the gate. Word was already spreading through the base communication networks that something significant was happening at the main checkpoint. The incident was taking on a life of its own, growing far beyond what Sarah had initially hoped to avoid. Sarah herself was now inside the administration building, where she was being briefed on the morning's planned activities. Her work at Fort Harrison involved consultation on advanced defense technologies, and the projects she was reviewing had implications for national security. The delay at the gate had already pushed back several important meetings with contractors and government officials. Back at the checkpoint, General Chen was conducting what amounted to an impromptu investigation into the incident. He was documenting Private Jackson's responses for what would undoubtedly become a formal review of gate security procedures. The presence of 3 general officers at a gate incident was unprecedented and indicated that this situation had implications far beyond a simple misunderstanding. Within 30 minutes of the general's arrival, the main conference room of Fort Harrison's administration building had been transformed into an impromptu briefing center. Sarah sat at the head of a polished oak table, surrounded by military officers, defense contractors, and government officials who had been waiting for her arrival to begin their scheduled sessions. Dr. Sarah Martinez was not just any consultant. She held advanced degrees in aerospace engineering and theoretical physics from MIT, and her security clearance was among the highest levels granted by the Department of Defense. Her specialization in hypersonic weapon systems and advanced radar technology made her one of the most sought-after experts in her field. The project they were discussing that morning involved the development of next-generation missile defense systems, technology that could reshape the balance of power in modern warfare. Countries around the world were racing to develop hypersonic weapons that could evade traditional defense systems, and Sarah's work was crucial to maintaining American technological superiority. "Dr. Martinez, we're grateful you could make it despite the complications at the gate," said Colonel Rebecca Torres, the project director. "Your analysis of the latest test data has been eagerly anticipated by everyone in this room." Sarah smiled professionally as she opened her laptop and began connecting to the secure projection system. "Of course, Colonel. I apologize for the delay. It seems there was some confusion about my authorization to be here." The understatement drew knowing glances around the table. Word of the gate incident had already reached the attendees, and many were privately amazed that a junior enlisted soldier had managed to delay one of the nation's most important defense consultants. The story was already becoming legendary within the base's officer community. Meanwhile, back at the gate, Private Jackson found himself at the center of an increasingly complex investigation. Sergeant Williams, his immediate supervisor, had arrived and was now fielding questions from multiple general officers about training procedures and security protocols. "Sergeant Williams," General Hayes inquired, "can you help us understand how Private Jackson came to believe that refusing to examine identification was consistent with base security procedures?" Sergeant Williams, a 20-year veteran with experience at installations around the world, was struggling to find an adequate explanation. "Ma'am, Private Jackson is still relatively new to gate duty. However, the protocols are clear that all personnel must examine credentials before making access decisions." The investigation was revealing systemic issues beyond just one guard's poor judgment. General Chen's questions were uncovering gaps in training and supervision that had allowed such a significant breach of protocol to occur. The fact that a junior soldier felt empowered to refuse to examine credentials suggested problems with the base's security culture. "Private Jackson," General Chen continued, "when Dr. Martinez told you that you would regret not checking her identification, what did you think she meant?" "Sir, I thought she was just trying to intimidate me into letting her onto the base," Private Jackson replied honestly. "I didn't think civilians should be making threats to military personnel." The response revealed the depth of his misunderstanding. Private Jackson had interpreted Sarah's professional confidence as civilian arrogance, never considering that her certainty might stem from legitimate authority. His assumptions about civilian-military relationships had blinded him to the possibility that some civilians held positions of significant importance to national defense. General Morrison was taking detailed notes throughout the questioning. As the officer responsible for training standards, he was already formulating recommendations for preventing similar incidents in the future. The presence of highly cleared civilian contractors on military bases was a reality that all security personnel needed to understand and accommodate properly. Back in the conference room, Sarah was presenting her analysis of recent test failures in the hypersonic defense program. Her insights were immediately recognized as breakthrough thinking that could save the project months of development time and millions of dollars in research costs. "The issue isn't with the tracking algorithms themselves," Sarah explained, pointing to complex equations on the projection screen. "The problem is that we're assuming linear flight paths when these weapons are designed to be unpredictable. We need to develop adaptive response systems that can anticipate evasive maneuvers." Defense contractor representatives were frantically taking notes, recognizing that Sarah's observations could revolutionize their approach to the entire project. Her ability to identify fundamental flaws in complex systems was exactly why she commanded such high fees and security access. General Hayes, who had returned to the conference room after ensuring the gate situation was being properly handled, listened intently to Sarah's presentation. She understood that the morning's delay could have had serious implications for national security if it had prevented this crucial briefing from taking place. "Dr. Martinez," General Hayes interjected, "your analysis suggests we need to completely redesign our response algorithms. What kind of timeline are we looking at for implementation?" Sarah considered the question carefully. "With proper resources and cooperation between the military and contractor teams, we could have preliminary algorithms ready for testing within 6 weeks. However, this assumes we can maintain the level of collaboration and information sharing that makes rapid development possible." The subtle reference to collaboration and information sharing was not lost on anyone in the room. Sarah's ability to work effectively with military personnel depended on smooth coordination and mutual respect. Incidents like the morning's gate confrontation could undermine the trust necessary for successful defense projects. Colonel Torres nodded thoughtfully. "We'll ensure that all base personnel understand the importance of proper credential processing. This morning's incident will not be repeated." The conversation continued for another hour, with Sarah providing detailed technical recommendations that would guide the project for months to come. Her expertise was saving the defense program from potential failure while advancing capabilities that could protect American forces around the world. During a break in the technical discussions, General Morrison approached Sarah privately. "Dr. Martinez, I want to personally apologize for this morning's incident. We're implementing immediate changes to our training procedures to prevent similar situations." Sarah appreciated the gesture, but was more interested in ensuring future cooperation than dwelling on past mistakes. "General, these things happen. What's important is that we learn from them and improve our processes. The work we're doing here is too important to let personality conflicts or misunderstandings interfere with progress." Her gracious response impressed the general, who had seen other high-level consultants become difficult to work with after experiencing much smaller slights. Sarah's focus on the mission, rather than personal grievances, demonstrated the professionalism that made her so valuable to defense programs. By noon, news of the morning's incident had spread throughout Fort Harrison and begun reaching other military installations through informal communication networks. The story of a junior guard refusing to check the ID of one of the nation's most important defense consultants was becoming a cautionary tale about the importance of following proper procedures. Private Jackson found himself in the uncomfortable position of being the subject of discussions among senior officers throughout the base. His supervisor, Sergeant Williams, was conducting mandatory retraining sessions for all gate personnel, using the morning's incident as a real-world example of how poor judgment could compromise base operations. "The fundamental principle," Sergeant Williams explained to the assembled guards, "is that we examine credentials before making decisions. Private Jackson's assumption that he could determine authorization without looking at identification violated every protocol we teach." The other guards listened intently, recognizing that they could easily have made similar mistakes under different circumstances. The incident was serving as a wake-up call about the importance of following established procedures regardless of personal assumptions or biases. Meanwhile, Sarah's afternoon meetings were proceeding smoothly, with her insights continuing to reshape the defense project's direction. Her recommendations were being incorporated into revised technical specifications that would guide development efforts for the next phase of the program. General Chen had concluded his investigation and was preparing a comprehensive report on the incident. His findings would lead to significant changes in base security training and supervision procedures. The report would also serve as a case study for other military installations facing similar challenges with civilian contractor access. "The core issue," General Chen explained to his staff, "was not malicious intent, but rather inadequate understanding of the diverse nature of authorized personnel on modern military installations. Private Jackson's training had not adequately prepared him to recognize that high-level civilian contractors might not fit traditional expectations. The investigation had revealed that Private Jackson's mistake stemmed from outdated assumptions about military-civilian relationships. His mental image of authorized base personnel did not include accomplished scientists and engineers who might appear to be ordinary civilians, but possessed security clearances and access rights exceeding those of many military officers. As the afternoon progressed, Sarah completed her technical briefings and began preparing for departure. Her recommendations had been well received, and the project team was energized by her innovative approaches to the challenges they faced. The morning's delay had been overcome, but it had highlighted the importance of smooth coordination between military and civilian personnel. General Hayes requested a private meeting with Sarah before her departure. The base commander wanted to ensure that the incident would not damage the working relationship between Fort Harrison and one of the Defense Department's most valued consultants. "Dr. Martinez, I want to personally assure you that we're taking comprehensive action to prevent similar incidents. Your work here is absolutely crucial to our mission, and we cannot afford to have administrative mistakes interfere with national defense priorities." Sarah appreciated the general's concern, but was characteristically focused on practical solutions rather than personal grievances. "General Hayes, I understand that training young soldiers is a complex challenge. What's important is that we use this experience to improve procedures for everyone involved." The conversation revealed Sarah's broader perspective on military-civilian cooperation. She had worked with military personnel around the world and understood that successful defense programs required mutual respect and understanding between uniformed and civilian personnel. Building those relationships was an ongoing process that required patience and professionalism from all parties. Back at the gate, Private Jackson was completing his shift under the watchful supervision of senior personnel. The remainder of his day had passed without incident, but he was acutely aware that his career had been fundamentally changed by the morning's events. His actions would likely follow him for years as an example of how not to handle gate security. Sergeant Williams was developing new training materials that would help future guards understand the diverse nature of authorized base personnel. The curriculum would include specific guidance on processing credentials for high-level civilian contractors who might not fit traditional military stereotypes. The key lesson, Sergeant Williams explained to his training development team, is that we cannot make assumptions about authorization based on appearance or civilian status. Our job is to examine credentials and follow established procedures, not to make subjective judgments about who belongs on the base. The training revisions would be implemented throughout the military's gate security program, potentially preventing similar incidents at installations around the world. Private Jackson's mistake was becoming a catalyst for systemic improvements in military security procedures. As evening approached, Sarah completed her final meetings and prepared for departure. Her brief visit to Fort Harrison had accomplished its intended objectives despite the morning's complications. The technical recommendations she had provided would advance critical defense capabilities, while her gracious handling of the gate incident had strengthened relationships between civilian and military personnel. General Morrison approached Sarah as she gathered her materials. "Dr. Martinez, I want you to know that your professionalism throughout this day has been noted and appreciated. Many consultants might have allowed this morning's incident to affect their willingness to work with us, but you've remained focused on the mission." Sarah smiled as she packed her laptop. "General, the work we're doing here is too important to let personal issues interfere. Our adversaries around the world are developing advanced weapons systems, and American security depends on our ability to work together effectively. A misunderstanding at the gate is insignificant compared to the challenges we face in defending our nation." Her response encapsulated the perspective that had made her so successful in defense consulting. Sarah understood that individual personalities and temporary frustrations were less important than the broader mission of maintaining technological superiority. Her ability to maintain focus on strategic objectives rather than personal grievances had earned her respect throughout the defense community. The day's events were already being analyzed by base leadership as an opportunity to improve operations. The incident had revealed weaknesses in training and supervision that could be addressed before they caused more serious problems. Private. 3 weeks later, the changes implemented at Fort Harrison in response to the gate incident had become a model for military installations across the country. The comprehensive training program developed by Sergeant Williams was being adopted by bases worldwide, and the incident had become a widely discussed case study in military security education. Private Jackson had been transferred to a different assignment where he could receive additional training and mentorship. While his career had been significantly impacted by the incident, military leadership recognized that he was a young soldier who had made a serious mistake, rather than someone with malicious intent. His new assignment included extensive education about military-civilian cooperation and the importance of following established procedures. Sarah returned to Fort Harrison several times over the following months, as the hypersonic defense project progressed. Her technical recommendations had proven even more valuable than initially anticipated, leading to breakthrough developments that advanced American defensive capabilities significantly. The project was now ahead of schedule and under budget, largely due to her innovative approaches to complex engineering challenges. General Hayes had requested that Sarah serve as a consultant on improving military-civilian coordination procedures. Her insights into the challenges faced by civilian contractors working with military personnel were helping to develop better policies and training programs. The gate incident had become an opportunity to strengthen relationships between uniformed and civilian defense personnel. "Dr. Martinez," General Hayes explained during one of these follow-up meetings, "your experience here has helped us recognize that we needed to better prepare our personnel for the realities of modern defense cooperation. The days when military bases only dealt with uniformed personnel are long gone." Sarah's influence extended beyond technical contributions to the defense project. Her professional response to the gate incident had earned her widespread respect within the military community, and her recommendations for improving civilian-military cooperation were being implemented at installations around the world. The hypersonic defense system that Sarah had helped develop was now entering final testing phases. Early results exceeded all expectations, with the system successfully intercepting test targets that had previously been considered impossible to defend against. Military analysts projected that the new technology would provide American forces with decisive advantages in potential future conflicts. Colonel Torres, who had directed the original project, was promoted to general officer partly based on the success of the hypersonic defense program. Her skillful management of the civilian military team that Sarah had led was recognized as a model for future cooperation between defense contractors and military personnel. The key to our success, General Torres explained in her promotion ceremony speech, was recognizing that defending America requires the best minds from both military and civilian communities working together. We cannot afford to let administrative mistakes or cultural misunderstandings interfere with our mission. Private Jackson, meanwhile, had completed his additional training and was showing significant improvement in his new assignment. The incident had taught him valuable lessons about the importance of following procedures and avoiding assumptions based on limited information. His supervisors noted that he had become particularly conscientious about examining credentials and treating all personnel with appropriate respect. Sergeant Williams had been recognized for his role in developing improved training procedures and was selected to lead a military-wide initiative to enhance gate security protocols. His comprehensive analysis of the original incident had identified systemic weaknesses that extended far beyond Fort Harrison, and his solutions were preventing similar problems at installations throughout the defense system. The story of the gate incident had become legendary within military circles, but not as a source of humor or embarrassment. Instead, it was remembered as an example of how individual mistakes could be transformed into opportunities for systematic improvement. The incident had led to better training, stronger procedures, and enhanced cooperation between military and civilian personnel. Sarah's reputation within the defense community had been further enhanced by her gracious handling of the situation. Defense contractors and military officers alike appreciated her focus on mission success rather than personal grievances. Her ability to maintain professional relationships despite temporary setbacks had become a model for others working in high-stress defense environments. The broader implications of the incident continued to influence military policy development. Pentagon officials had used the Fort Harrison experience to develop new guidelines for civilian contractor access to military installations. These policies balanced security requirements with the need for efficient cooperation between military and civilian defense personnel. General Chen's comprehensive investigation report had become required reading for military security personnel worldwide. His analysis of how assumptions and inadequate training could compromise base operations was being used to develop better preparation programs for soldiers assigned to security duties. The hypersonic defense technology that had emerged from Sarah's work was now being deployed to protect American military assets around the world. The system's success in intercepting advanced weapons had already influenced strategic planning by potential adversaries, contributing to global stability by reducing the effectiveness of aggressive actions. As Sarah reflected on the entire experience months later, she recognized that the gate incident had ultimately strengthened rather than weakened her working relationship with the military. The professional manner in which Fort Harrison's leadership had addressed the situation had increased her confidence in military-civilian cooperation. Sometimes, she explained to a colleague, the most valuable outcomes emerge from unexpected challenges. That morning at Fort Harrison could have damaged important relationships and set back crucial defense programs. Instead, it became an opportunity to improve procedures and strengthen cooperation between military and civilian personnel. The incident had demonstrated that individual mistakes need not become permanent failures if they are addressed with professionalism, thoroughness, and a commitment to learning from experience. Private Jackson's error had led to improvements that would benefit national defense for years to come, while Sarah's gracious response had set a standard for professional behavior in challenging circumstances. The legacy of that morning at Fort Harrison continued to influence military operations and civilian-military cooperation throughout the defense community. What had begun as a simple refusal to check identification had evolved into a comprehensive improvement in how America's military and civilian defense personnel worked together to protect national security. The story served as a reminder that in the complex world of modern defense, success required not only advanced technology and skilled personnel, but also the wisdom to learn from mistakes and the professionalism to maintain focus on the broader mission of protecting American interests around the world. Jackson's mistake was becoming a valuable learning experience for the entire installation.